Hi guys, my name is Heena, aka the Crazy Cat Writer, and I'm back with another episode in my AuthorTalk series. Today I will be interviewing author Sher Stultz, and today we'll be talking about her historical science fiction fantasy time travel adventure novel, The Rescue. So let's begin. Hello, author Sher. Welcome to my Author Talk series. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Cher. I live in Western Washington, which is geographically, I live south of Seattle and east of Tacoma. Those are the big cities that people would know. And I live in the valley of a big mountain called Mount Rainier, which is an active but dormant volcano. It's a weird thing. It's a very big volcano that's currently dormant, but they call it active. So we have a monthly drill for the volcano. I'm a mom. I have a daughter who's 21. I'm a teacher. My superpower is talking. I love to talk to people. My daughter thinks I'm the most embarrassing person in the world, but I will talk to anyone, anytime, grocery store, parking lot, people. I'm interested in them. So say something that I might not have put in my bio on Amazon. Before the lockdown started, I was working on a different project called which is a podcast that I have recorded probably a dozen people's life stories. And I would meet with people and they would tell me about their lives. And that was a little bit different genre for me, but I just love to talk to people. I met with a lady who was 101 years old. She's passed away now, but I was happy to record her story. So I do, besides writing, I love to talk to people. I'm just a people person, but I like to listen to what they have to say. I find human lives so complex and interesting. But once the lockdown happened, especially because I was talking to a lot of older people, I wasn't able to access them. So I've had to kind of put a pin in that. But that's something different about me that you might not have read in my bio.
Right. Can you tell us something about your book, The Rescue?
Well, another thing people may not know, I have people that read the book from all different walks of life right now. The book is actually set in a real place. So if you took a plane to Seattle and got off a plane and hit an Uber, you could drive to West Seattle and they could drop you off in the neighborhood where Aeneas, CJ, and Tabitha live. You could go to the same coffee shop, Freshies, where they meet up. You could go to the same soccer field where Aeneas plays soccer, where different things happen. You could walk around that whole entire neighborhood. When I was trying to find a place setting for the book, I had visited West Seattle for 9 o'clock. And I was so in love with this. It was not like Seattle. Seattle is a big metropolitan area. It was a little calm and quirky, lots of little neighborhoods. And I was thinking of a place for the book. I just couldn't think of a better place. I mean, I couldn't make up anything bad I was seeing. And so if you're not from the area and you're not reading the book, you may not know that all of this actually exists. I love to read books where I can go to places, walk in the character's footsteps.
Okay.
And that's something you may not know about the book, that it is 100% that all the locations in Alaska, California, and Washington are real places, with a couple of exceptions.
Right.
So,
okay. Wow. That's wonderful. Thanks a lot for telling us about that, because I read the book, but I haven't been to US. So I actually did not know about that the places were so real. So it's actually wonderful to know.
Even people from the United States don't necessarily know that it's a place.
Right. It is a huge country, right? So I do know this, that a lot of people who stay in one state have actually not been to the other side of the country. So yeah, that's a great insight. Okay, so what is that one message that you are trying to send to the reader? Tell the reader.
Well, I was thinking about like the big picture of the book. I like to think about the fact that there's no cookie cutter way to live your life. Aeneas is completely different from the rest of his family. They're scientists, they're academics, and he's not like them. And he's not going to be like them because he has this special gift. And he has to make his own way in the world without worrying about the fact that he's different. And I think for me, and I don't want to sound so self-help and preachy because there's a lot of self-help books out there, but they're extremely popular. You have to drive your own bus. You can't be the passenger. You've got to be the driver. And I want people and kids who read this book to realize that it's okay if you're not just like your family. CJ and Tabitha aren't like their families either, and that kind of forms that friendship connection with them. And so you are who you are. Even if you turn out to not a genius and a time traveler, then you do you. That's what I tell my students. They're like, and I'm like, hey, you do you. You are you. And so that's kind of a big picture message of the book that I try to gently push out there.
Okay. Now here's a tricky question. Who is your favorite character?
Okay.
And why?
So that is such a hard question for me. I have so many characters in the book. You've read the book, there's so many people. And there is not a favorite character. There's a favorite relationship. So I have this relationship that I love, which is CJ, Aeneas, and Tabitha. So Aeneas is kind of a cool guy. He's a soccer player. He's attractive. He's athletic. CJ, kind of a geeky younger kid. Tabitha is his cousin. It's an unlikely friendship. And I love the relationship that they have because they kind of respect their differences. CJ is sports obsessed. He loves Bollywood music. He loves to sniff hair. He's kind of a weird guy. And Aeneas is a little bit more cool and popular. And Tabitha is a people watcher. She's not musical or theatrical like the rest of her family. And so the three of them kind of have this understanding that they are good with each other. They respect each other and they don't judge each other. And I thought really, and that's kind of my favorite thing about the book. I love all the characters. I mean, I love Cassie. She's such a badass. I mean, she just goes for it. She's so tough. But I love the relationship between the three of them. I think it's sweet and it's poignant and it drives the next story as well.
Right. Okay. What inspired you to write this book? An idea, some anecdote, a dream, or something else entirely?
Well, I have to confess, and I'm confessing here, many years ago, I had two students in my 6th grade science class that were named Aeneas and Tabitha. And they sat right next to each other. And they had these really cool last names. I won't say their last names because they're real people. Right. And one day I was teaching, I said, they would be great characters in a book. And I said, everyone write like a children's detective novel. And I'm making conversation. I would use your guys' names. They're so interesting. I completely forgot about that. It just kind of went somewhere else in my brain. And then about a year later, I was driving my car and I had this idea for a book. And then I thought, wait a minute, I could use these two names, Aeneas and Tabitha. And I started journaling about it. And I started with my teacher. And then I started writing the book. And I work in a really diverse place. So Western Washington has a lot of diversity. I have a lot of students who are biracial or multi-ethnic, but they don't always show up in books. And so I really tried to put a lot of those characters in the book so that the kids that I was teaching at the time would see themselves or see people like them in the book, like Sheila, who's a really wonderful lady. I love her character. She's part Pacific Islander and part First Nation Alaska Native. And so I had all these different combinations of characters, but that the students inspired me, but these two particular students, their names kind of just stuck with me and they became characters in the book. And now they're grown up. It's been a long time, but they're probably in their 19 or 20 now. So.
Okay, cool. How long did it take you to write this particular book?
This particular book, The Rescue, took me about 2.5 years. And then I started looking for a publisher and looking for an agent. And it was very challenging. And I became so miserable. All I was doing was sort of hooking out emails and sending out summaries for the book. And I became so unhappy that I just put a pin in it. I said, you know what? I'm just going to write book 2. I was so miserable that I started writing book 2. And then it became so much easier. And so it took me 2.5 years. And then it took me another 2 years to write book 2. Okay. But here's the thing about time travel. When you have things happening in 2015 and in 2053, there's a lot of loose ends. So it turns out that it was better to have the second book written to line up the first book. I didn't know that, but it all worked out seamlessly. I'm glad that that's how it happened. So 5 years later, 6 years later, the first book is published and the second book is on its way.
Right. Okay, great. Are you working on any other stories presently?
I am working on The Resurrection. Book 2 is called The Resurrection, and I've completely finished it. I've gone through and done one draft edit. I'm going another draft edit, and now I'm rewriting another scene that I needed a little bit of punch with. And that's with Cassie's brother, Lux, who is the big geneticist and all, who ends up discovering that Cassie has certain genes that shoot her into the time stream that other people may or may not have. And so I'm hoping to have The Resurrection out later this year. I know I kind of held back book 1, but that's worked out better for me. And then because book 1 a cliffhanger, book 2 can come right around. And now I'm working on the outlines for book 3.
Oh, great.
So,
okay. When did you decide to become a writer? Was it easy for you to follow your passion, or did you have to make some sacrifices along the way?
So I never decided to become a writer. I just have always needed to write. I don't know how your brain works, but I have a lot of stuff up here, and it's kind of like a housekeeping. Like I just got to sweep it out. So I would write it on paper. I would keep journals back before I'm old. I'm 51. I didn't own a computer until I was in my late 20s, right? So I was writing on notebook paper and journals and things like that. And so I worked for my high school newspaper. I worked for my college newspaper. Okay. I took a big trip one summer with my daughter and traveled all over the United States. And we kept a blog and I made videos. I have written grants for my school to get money. I've done nonfiction articles for magazines. But I wrote a book in my 20s. I mean, it's around here somewhere in some kind of file. I never did anything with it. It's probably a huge mess, but I wrote a whole novel. So I've always been writing. But when I started this book, I was super excited about it. And I had just 50,000 words in. And I told one of my friends about it. We were walking around West Seattle. I said, I've got to show you this place, because she lives in a different part of Seattle. I said, I see my book here. And we're walking around. And she said, do you want me to help you with this? Do you want me to be your developmental editor? And I said, I need some help. This book is all over the place. We met every Saturday for a year, for an hour. So we would meet over the phone. We would, the manuscript up. And, as a business, you have family, you have other obligations. To try to get to an hour every Saturday, it was huge. She has she has 2 sons. I have a daughter. There was all kinds of activities with our families. But it was a year. We worked on that book every Saturday for an hour and a half for a year, just editing and tweaking. That was huge. And that was the big turnaround for me, of really getting the book into publishable format, taking all the messy thoughts in my head and all the different things. And, you have to sometimes cut things down. I put some extra stories on the website that we finally had to agree to cut. I hate to cut things, but she said, we've got this. It's too big. So.
Okay. What is your writing ritual? How do you do it?
I'm a really busy person because I'm a teacher. And so I have the summers off. In the summertime, I do it into my gardening mode or my hiking mode. I'm better in the morning. In the mornings, I like to get up and write. But during the school year, I just write when I have a moment. And I'm kind of crazy about it because I don't always have a moment. So I might go 4 or 5 days and not write, and then chunk in another hour and a half some other time. There's not a set ritual for me. Because everybody gets writer's block. I don't know if you've ever had it. It's a tough piece. I kind of sit there and I think, if this isn't working, I'm going to go do something else. So I don't have a ritual. I have a moment. Do I feel good? Am I going to get something done? And if I do, just go for it. My rituals aren't that great because I'm too busy to have one. Sorry.
No, that's understandable. That's so. Being a writer myself, actually, I can totally relate to, just writing whenever you can find the time, and, not having the luxury of, kind of blaming it on writer's block, because when you have the time, you do it. When you don't have the time, you simply can't. Right?
No. Right. You go when you got the time. And yeah. I've done crazy things. if I'm somewhere, like this happens to me in the car because I have to drive to work and I'm sitting there and I have a moment where I think of something for the book. I have to dig into grab a receipt from the grocery store and like write down the scene, then shove it in my pocket, come home and put it in my notebook and rewrite it. And that has happened to me a dozen times. Or a sticky note. It's not all happening on the laptop. Sometimes it's in weird places. And sometimes if I am really stuck, the best to do is to get paper. Like I keep scraps of paper. This is like an older version of the book and I'd recycle it. I just have to write, physically write, not type on the computer and make like messy scribble. That's kind of how, I teach kids that are young and most of their experience has been digital, but I've written on paper for years and I kind of need it. I don't know why, but I need paper. Yeah.
So how do you prefer to write most of your book? Do you prefer to write it first in longhand and then type it out, or do you do it simultaneously or in a mixed way, or
both?
How do you do it?
Yeah, I do it both ways. I have sticky notes. I have a board by my bed. It's like a whiteboard that I put like things on, and then I have a notebook, and then like I told you, scraps of paper. I'm so worried I'm going to lose something. So I finally got better about just taking a piece of tape and taping the scrap of paper in the notebook if I don't have time to rewrite it. I work in Google Docs most of the time, and then I also work in Word. I like Google Docs because I can leave little notes for myself, which I do frequently. And that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So have you had a bad case of writer's block in your writing journey?
Yeah, I did. I went about 5 months without writing and working on the book. The first time I was so busy at my job. There was so many things going on. And it was winter here. And in the Pacific Northwest, it's really dark and gray. Like you just don't get a lot of sunlight. And that was so challenging for me. And I just felt so guilty and awful. If other writers feel that way, where you're just like, I need to do it, but I can't. I just don't have any. I was such a weird feeling. Like I felt like I was neglecting a child. It was awful. And then something snapped. Once I started working with my friend of India and we started meeting every Saturday, like I told you, I had that commitment. And that was huge because having to be ready to meet with her every week forced me to make sure that I was working on things. Sometimes you need to have somebody hold you accountable as a writer. And that's an important thing. I didn't even realize until we just started talking about it.
Right. Yes. Can you share your 5 favorite books? Either 5 favorite books or 5 authors. Anything will do.
Okay. I read a lot, crazy a lot. I will read books just because they're set here. But I have a favorite author. I don't know if you know her. Her name is Louise Erdrich. She's written lots of different books. They're mostly set in North Dakota. They're sort of a magical Native American element to them. I love them. I love J.K. Rowling. I love Rick Riordan. They write, the Harry Potter series, the Percy Jackson series. I love anything that's fun and adventure-y. I love Tolkien. I read J.R.R. Tolkien when I was in like 12 or 13. It was a really hard book to read when I was young.
Right, yes.
But I love these magical worlds. I love P.G. Wodehouse. He's an old British author, but he's just so funny. The comedy. I love sort of subtle comedy or overt comedy. Right now, I'm reading an author named Ellie Griffiths, and she writes mysteries that are set in Norfolk, England. She has Dr. Ruth Galloway, and I just got her new book in, and I love, not a huge fan of archaeology, but I love the character Ruth. And so sometimes I'll pick books just because. I also love Alan Bradley. He wrote the Flavia de Luce mystery series. They're hilarious. I named one of my chickens after the main character. So I can't even begin to tell you. I will go through books. I probably read 40 to 50 books a year. And I'm desperate for always new things to read.
Right.
So I will read things again that I've read before just because I love them. So.
Right. Actually, Tolkien reminds me, I love Hobbit. I actually prefer Hobbit over the LOTR series. the trilogy. And one of my cats is actually named Bilbo. Bilbo Baggins is one of my favorite characters.
Here's Bilbo.
He's Bilbo.
I'm going to tell you, you have Bilbo and I have Flavia. I was in the grocery store yesterday and I walked past a guy and I stopped. He looked just like Frodo. I didn't want to say anything, but I was like, oh my. He looked like him. He was kind of a stockier, shorter guy. And he had the beard and the face and everything. And I just was sort of stunned. And I thought, does anybody ever tell you you look like the character from the Hobbit movie? But I didn't say anything. People's masks have just come off, right? And I'm just looking at people going, you look just like Frodo. But he did. Hey, that's a compliment in my book, you know?
Right. It is. Okay.
I love the Hobbit.
Yes. Even I love it. I actually remember reading it in one night. I just actually randomly started reading it. I did not know it was a very popular book that time because I just came on Goodreads and I wasn't in contact with a lot of people who read a lot. So I just kind of randomly picked up the book and I read The Hobbit and I was like, I think I just discovered something truly magical, you know? And I was like, oh my God, I need to. Then I actually looked up J.R.R. Tolkien and I was like, okay. And then since then, I think I've read the book more than 10 times. And the Hobbit and
it's very intricate.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I would have to read it again because there's so much in it. It's a super detailed book. Yes. I mean, I can't write at that level, but there's so much intricacy in that book. I could never. That is intense.
It's just you can't.
I don't know how to do it.
You just can't help being pulled into it, right? Like it's so. It's impossible to think of it as fantasy. It just feels like so real, right? Like everything is real.
Well, once they put it on the screen, it made it even more real. I loved the movies too. I thought they were well done. Yes. So it's a brilliant series. It's timeless. That's the great thing about it. I think it's inspired a lot of other writers.
Yeah.
So
right. What advice would you give to aspiring authors?
Well, I'm going to say this, and I think it's something important. Writing is the easy part because it's fun. Because if you're a writer, you love to write. Publishing the next level is so incredibly challenging because it requires you to kind of, I have a puppy under me, kind of jump out of your comfort zone is what you know. And it's hard. It's like a marathon. I mean, I looked so far and tried to find a publisher, and then I just decided I'm going to do it myself.
Okay.
But I didn't get there by myself. Here's what writers need. And this is my opinion, and everybody can do what they want. You need a cheerleader, right? If it's your best friend, it's a friend in your family, a family member, you need someone that is your cheerleader. My friend Maggie is my cheerleader. When I was down in the dumps and never thought I would get this far, she was always pushing me. And she kept saying, this will happen. Just take your time. And I would get all grumpy and impatient because I'm a fast person. And I would call her up and I would complain and I would say I was unhappy. The book is not moving. The publishing part is so stressful. And she finally said, you're being ridiculous, right? You need kind of a cheerleader, but you also need like a tough love cheerleader. And I think if you're a writer and you're trying to go it alone, you need to branch out. You don't necessarily, you can hang out with other writers, but you need a cheerleader. You need somebody that has your back, that keeps pushing you and that tells you you're being silly, when you're being ridiculous, or when you need to keep going for it. And I have to say that if it weren't for Maggie, I don't think I would have gotten the book. I wouldn't have gotten it this far. I just wouldn't have. Because we would go for walks and she would say, it's a great story. I love it. You got to keep going. And I would complain and she would just say, she would give me that look like, you need to stop. Just shut up. You need to keep going. And I think for writers, there's lots of advice I could give people, but you need a support system because it is a solitary kind of act. We're all up here, we're down here, we're up here, but we're kind of alone.
Who or what has been the most significant influence in your writing career?
Wow, that's a tough one. I learned to write in college. I had a professor that was really kind to me. His name was Bill Bonney. And I wasn't writing fiction at the time, but Bill taught me how to write well. And that kind of put me in a better position to be a writer, a fiction writer. But my biggest influence has been every single person I've met. And that sounds crazy, but I'm a big people watcher. Tabitha is too. Every character in my book has a tiny piece of me, but I'm a big people watcher. And so like I told you before, I love stories. I love people's stories. I'm just influenced by the people that I meet, even if it's just a lady I bump into at the grocery store or a friend I've had for 25 years. I'm so interested in stories that other people's stories inspire me to write stories. Sounds kind of crazy, but that's where my inspiration comes from.
Okay. Which one of your characters can you say you would least get along with in real life?
Oh, okay. Well, honestly, it's probably Cassie. She and I fight all the time in this book. She is right here. She is so tough. I love Harold. Harold is kind of cerebral and smart. Aeneas is laid back. CJ is just quirky and funny. Tabitha is a people watcher like me. Cassie is a person who is fighting. She's fighting to save her father. She's clever and smart. She doesn't have a lot of friends because she hangs out with her cousins because she's got a big secret she can't tell people. But she's her personality is so strong and so stubborn that she and I would probably knock heads a lot. Especially if I were her mother, I would probably, she's tough, but I admire her and I can't wait to see what happens to her in book 2. Big plans for her. She's got new things coming. She meets a new person and he's amazing. And so lots of cool things are happening. So,
okay.
But yeah, Cassie is tough from me.
Right. Okay, if you could spend time with any one character from any of your books, who would it be and what would you guys do?
Oh my gosh, it would definitely be Harold. Harold is just so unusual as a person. And he's not the time traveler in the book. He is the person that keeps all these things happening. He's a master coder. He's a programmer. He's a chef. I think I would love to hang out with Harold because I think he and I would have great conversations. And if I have to tell you, everybody in the book is a little bit different. And every time an author writes a character, there's always a tiny little piece of themselves. But I gave Harold more of me than I gave anybody else. So I don't know. I think I have a lot in common with Harold. I'd love to see him in action. And so that's who I'd like to meet.
Okay.
But I will tell you a weird story, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I was in West Seattle, and I was walking to Freshies. Freshies is a real place, and sometimes, they didn't realize I was writing the book in there, but I would sit there and sometimes write the book. Right. And I was walking past the market, and this young woman was walking towards me, and she had auburn hair, and she looked exactly how I imagined Tabitha. And it was the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. I just stopped because she was probably 16 or 17 and she walked past me and I looked at her and I tried not to stare at her. And then I started to kind of tear up because it was exactly as how I imagined her. And it just was the strangest thing. It was like I was in some sort of a movie where I'm walking down the street and I see a character in my book walk right at me. I've seen a guy in a grocery store that looked like Socrates because Socrates is kind of a hipster, really sexy. And he's the sexy smart older brother to Aeneas's slightly younger and still working it out. But yeah, I bumped into Tabitha right where I would have normally bumped into Tabitha if she'd been a real person. I don't know if that's ever happened to any other writer, but I just kind of stopped and went and just the tears kind of came and I thought, that was Tabitha. And that made me feel kind of strange and good at the same time. But yeah, now I even think about it again, it makes me it was just the strangest thing. Maybe it's my brain. I was completely thinking about the book, and a girl walked towards me, but I see kids all the time because I teach high school, but it was her. There she was. So strange.
Right.
On the story. Yeah.
Okay. Do you read all the reviews for your books, even the negative ones? And how does reading your reviews make you feel?
I am still new to the publishing world, so I don't have a ton of reviews clocked. I had decided a long time ago when I started this process, and I got my first review in, and it was really good, and it made me feel wonderful. I realized that was not going to be always the case because everybody has different opinions. And so I decided that I was going to have to be not taking things personally. So I teach high school, which means I deal with kids all the time. And sometimes they have bad days, and sometimes they have good days, and sometimes and something. I decided I was going to approach it with the same mindset. I read all the reviews, but I decided that I can't take everything personally, or I'm never going to get anywhere in this business because I'm going to get so wrapped up in stuff. If it's something that's good feedback, I use it. If it was something that I didn't understand,
right, I
can either talk to the review go, but you got to be a little bit more thick-skinned or you can't move forward, I think.
Right.
Oh, I said, if I'm getting the same kind of review over and over again, where people are having confusion, one of the reasons that the book has in the very beginning, it has the who's in the very beginning, like the who's is when I was getting reader feedback, they were having a little bit of trouble tracking some of the families.
Okay.
And I kept getting that same feedback. This was before the book was published. It was when it was still in like beta status that people were reading. And we decided to go ahead and put in a who's who.
Okay.
And so that was feedback I was getting that was the same from everyone. I'm having trouble tracking some of the parents and some of the characters. And I said, okay, well, we could do a who's who. Right. And so I sat down with my friend and we worked it out. And some people don't use it and some people loved it. So.
Right. Have your students ever told you how they found the book? Have they read it? Like, I'm just curious.
I had right now, as of today, and I released in January, it's just March. I donated some copies to the school library. I had one student read it, and he was just in love with it. He was so cute. And then I have the school book club, I think, is going to read it this April.
Ooh,
and so that has been exciting for me. Yes. So I had some readers early on from a different school give me reader feedback. And that was a couple of years ago. And so they did little reviews. It was an 8th grade class. And so that was helpful too. But my students have just recently found out that I wrote a book, and they are all crazy for it. That not necessarily to read the book, that just the fact that I wrote a book. Right. So I'm not going to say that they all want to read it, but they were excited that I wrote one. So, yeah.
Great. So this brings us to the end of our interview. Thanks a lot, author Sher, for taking the time to talk with me. And
I'm so excited to have met with you.
Same here. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this opportunity to meet with you. And yeah.
Same here. All the best for your next book. And I'm really looking forward to reading the next book.
Thank you. Yes. The resurrection is coming soon. I'm excited. I am. So we're working on, like, should we do R's? The rescue, the resurrection, and then giving an R name for the third book.
Right.
I don't know. It's something we're rolling around. Right. I'm not sure if that's how we're going to do it, but that's it. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, don't know what you got the cover, but these are ferries. In Washington State, there's lots of islands, and people ride on the ferries. And so in one of the scenes in the book happens on after Cassie rescues her dad, they catch a ferry. These are the ferries. This is the Seattle skyline, and this is the Mount Rainier, which is the big volcano.
Okay.
And then on the back, this is Alki Beach that's across the bay from Seattle, where Aeneas and Scott are walking. So my illustrator is from here, Ty Palm, and we built the book around a real place. And so this is the time stream, Cassie coming through it, but this is the Seattle skyline in the back. So I mentioned that as a small piece that we did illustrate it so that it would be kind of all right here. So
that is so cool.
It was lovely to meet you.
Yes.
I'm excited that you love Tolkien just like me. Huge fan, been a fan since I was really young. And I'm glad we didn't have any trains or dogs barking. My dogs have done me a great favor. And well, you take care. And I know you're having a good night. I'm going to have a good day. Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. You can read my review of author Sher's book, The Rescue, on thereadingpart.com.